Hi, my name is Jessica Beha, and I'm with Great Rivers Regional System for Addiction Care. And we are doing our This Is My Story series. September is National Recovery Month, and we have been asked to do a mini This Is My Story. The theme for National Recovery Month this year is Recovery is for everyone, every person, every community, and every family. And so today we have Adam with us, who is willing to tell his story. And so Adam has a huge platform to tell his recovery story. And so we are thankful that he has taken the time today to share his story with us here at Great Rivers and with you watching on the other end. And so, Adam, I want to thank you first and foremost for agreeing to do this. Like I said, I follow your Sober Dad page. I love the content that you put out there. And so I am excited to hear your story today. And so I want to thank you for joining us. And without further ado, here is Adam.
Hey, thank you guys for having me. So I guess I'll just start at the very beginning and work my way up to where I'm at now. So my earliest struggles with addiction and alcoholism in my family was being raised by parents who used and dealt. My dad and my mom, they sold pills. And I actually remember from my earliest memories seeing seeing people come to my house and buying narcotic pills, prescription pills. And I didn't know it at the time because I was just a kid, and it actually took me till almost 11 to realize that my mom was she was using. So they were both selling. My mom was using. I grew up in a kind of toxic toxic environment. My parents, they had problems, and there was constant fighting and arguing, and sometimes it got physical. My dad, I feel like, had trouble dealing with his own emotions, and stayed angry most of the time. I remember this me and my mom moved out of so I have two older siblings, and at age 11 my mom and dad got into this huge fight. And if I remember correctly, it was because my dad had spanked me too hard, and she had enough, and they got into a fight, so we left at age 11. Moved in with my grandparents. In the top, well, hold on, let me back up. Another thing that played into my addiction was being sexually molested at age 8 by an older male family member on 3 different occasions. And so that, partnered with everything else, the first time that I ever used was at age 9, and I smoked weed with my grandparents had a foster home at that time, and some of the kids that was in placement had smoked weed with me. And then I didn't use again until I was about 10 or 11, and I had done hydrocodone for the first time. I had broken my hand and got a prescription. And then I remember having constant night terrors. I couldn't sleep. Constantly having to be with my mom. I was a really big mama's boy. I'd have to go to work with her and stay with her overnight, and I was super codependent on her. And then that last fight happened, and me and my mom moved out, and we moved in with my mom's parents, and I was introduced to the drug culture and the drug lifestyle with no filter. All of my uncles on my mom's side were heavy drug users, methamphetamine, intravenous, opioids, and just constant partying. And after we moved in with them and I was constantly surrounded by them, there was just no filter. And I was brought up in that street kind of lifestyle mentality, and I'm from a super rural area, and so it was just it was kind of just really chaotic. And my mom, her addiction progressed and evolved, and so did mine. I started using at 11, and I remember doing methamphetamine for the first time on my 14th birthday with one of my uncles. He actually talked me into spending my birthday money to go get it. And I remember bouncing around a lot because of my mom's addiction and because of my addiction. We could never keep the bills paid. So we was constantly fighting eviction notices, water cutoff notices, power cutoff notices. And so school was kind of a blur. I was really troubled adolescent, and I was acting out because I just had this non-caring attitude. And I never talked about any of the problems or any of the things that was going on in my home life. You know, I was kind of brought up just not to talk about that stuff. And I remember I used to go and sit in a counselor's office every day for an hour, and she never made me talk, but she knew that I don't know, it was crazy because I would just go there and sit and hang out with her, but I never really told her what was going on. I slept in school and constantly getting in fights. My mom's addiction progressed, and I turned into an enabler. You know, I've spoke at schools, a lot of schools, and I talk about this because we struggle with this across the nation with children who have addicts or parents struggling with addiction and or being raised by their grandparents. And I never held my mom accountable or talked her into getting help. I actually enabled her dysfunction, but like to the point where I would stay up till like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and wait on her to nod out and pass out, and then I'd go to sleep and then get myself up for school and go to school and just sleep all day in school because I thought that I was helping my mom by not getting CPS involved and not getting truancy involved. And you know, at this point, I'm full-blown chemically dependent, snorting prescription pain pills, and then 15, 16, I finally dropped out of school, and then I found out that my mom was using intravenously, and you know, that took us to a whole new bottom. And then the Oxy 80 wave came through West Virginia, and I got hooked on those. And then it got really bad. I couldn't hustle or sell. I would help my mom sell her prescription pills to make ends meet, to pay our rent and our utilities and stuff. And basically quit school at 16 to go to sell pills full time. Then the Oxy 80 wave hit, and at this point I was just snorting low grade prescription pain pills, and then I started doing those OCs, and man, my addiction just caught on like a wildfire. And ultimately I ended up catching my first charge over trying to feed my addiction to oxys. Found out whenever I was 16 also that my dad wasn't my biological father, and that my mom had an affair on him, and he knew it and knew that she got pregnant. And so that was kind of the reasoning for treating me a little different than the other two children, and the constant toxicity and the fighting. And then I was longing for that father companionship all through my teenage years, and I couldn't understand why I could never relate or get close to my dad. And then found out that he wasn't my biological father, and I reached out to my biological father, and he didn't want nothing to do with me because he had two younger children, and I was already full-blown in addiction, and he was afraid that I would impact or influence his other kids' lives into addiction, which was kind of crazy because even indirectly, without me having a relationship with them, they followed me. And, well, they fell into addiction also. But so yeah, man, my uncles were like my father figures, and they were all convicts and addicts and stuff like that. So I caught my first charge at 18 years old. By this point, I'm using intravenously also with my mom, and on my way to prison for the first time at 19 years old. from the ages of 19 to 29, probably actually 30, because the last time I did the math, it was like 11 years that I was stuck in the cycle of going to jail, getting out, going to jail, going to prison, getting out. For 11 years straight, I was either and 7.5 out of the 11 years, I was incarcerated behind the fence, either in jail or in prison. And so I spent almost all of my 20s in there. And what time that I wasn't in there, I was either strung out in addiction, on the run from new charges, on parole and on the run, or on probation, or some sort of I've fled to states. I've fled to states several times. I've been extradited from Alabama. That was like every time I get out, I try to leave state, and I'd go, like, I've been homeless in Georgia, homeless in Florida, just running from criminal charges in West Virginia. And then 2017, 2017, so 7.5 years total. I had made parole again, and that last time of being incarcerated, something was clicking. I reached this place in my mindset that that I felt more at home. Like, at one point in time, I did 3 years and 2 months straight incarcerated. And whenever I got out from that stint, like, I don't know, I had really, really bad social anxiety. I couldn't even go to family functions. I basically isolated and stayed in my room at my brother's house. He fortunately let me parole out there. And I could never make it out long. And even when I was out, whether I was using, whether I wasn't using, I was always miserable. And I constantly caught myself wanting to go back home, and I was referring to jails and institutions as home. I had formed this acceptance in my mind that was the expectancy of my life, was in and out of jail and prison, or strung out and being a drug dealer, and for the rest of my life. And I accepted it. I accepted that limitation that I put on my life. And then constant cycle of incarcerated. My most recent incarceration state, I had caught new charges, and they had just started drug court in my county. And the drug court lady in Nicholas County, Sherry Cook, she came and seen me like every week for like 6 or 7 weeks straight. And she's trying to talk me into going to treatment and accepting drug court as an alternative sentence. And I've been to prison 4 or 5 times. And I was just, I was like, no, I'm just going to go back to prison. I don't want to do that. But she just kept on and kept on and kept on, and she kept coming and seeing me. And eventually I felt bad because she was trying so hard for me and I wasn't trying. And I couldn't understand why, when everybody else had written me off, everybody else had given up on me, everybody else said, that I would die with a needle in my arm or in prison, and was okay with that, and I was okay with it. I didn't understand why she would keep fighting for me. So she came and seen me a final time, and I agreed, and I accepted recovery. And I got out a few days later and was in drug court, and I made it like 11 days in drug court, and I was relapsed, and I just absconded and didn't turn back in. And I came back like 11 days later, and I turned myself back in, wanting to go back to jail, wanting to go to prison. And she's like, no, you're going to rehab. And so she sent me to rehab. And I only made it a month and a half that time, you know, in recovery, but I ended up, you know, everything was fine until it come time to do the internal work and start looking at these sex harms against me and start looking at all the resentments and stuff that I had deep rooted, and just come to terms with all the bad stuff that I had done in my addiction and face it with a sober mind. And it was just, you know, just that, the thoughts of my mom, the thoughts of my childhood, and all the things that I wanted to keep buried coming to the surface. I wasn't willing to face yet. I wasn't ready, and I wasn't willing enough. So I ended up leaving that program and getting strung out on methamphetamine again. And I ended up leaving state, and it was like 47 days later, I got extradited from Alabama. I had gotten arrested down there, and it took, I don't know, a month and a half to get extradited back to West Virginia. And my first week back, here's Sherry Cook up there to visit me again. And I'm just like, she's not giving up, man. And at this point, I had felt so miserable for letting her down so many times. And she's like, no, you're going to give it another shot. That rehab didn't work. We're going to try another one. We're going to keep trying. We're not going to give up. And you know, I told her, I was like, okay, whatever. She's like, you got to go back in front of the judge, and I'm pretty sure he's going to let you back out, and we're going to find you another rehab. And I'm like, okay. But inside, I knew that's not what I was going to do. So whenever we went to court, she thought that I was coming there to ask the judge to let me go to rehab again. And I just told the judge, you know, that I didn't want to be a problem to this court anymore, and I was wasting their time, and I wanted to go to prison. And the judge, like, I remember the judge like pulling his glasses down to the end of the nose to look over his glasses at me, and he was in shock that I was like not wanting to take freedom again, that I wanted to go. And you know, that's the mentality that I had, that I just wanted to go home. And so he asked me like 3 or 4 times if I was sure, and I said yeah. And so I got sentenced to the Division of Corrections again. But that month and a half that I was in recovery, it like impacted me so much that the whole year that I was locked up that time, I constantly reminisced. You know, out of all the other times, I was always reminiscing addiction and glorifying and the chaotic lifestyle. But this whole time, I was like, man, I miss that brotherhood. I miss the companionship that I had. And so I got out a year later, made it out on parole again, and I made it like 3 weeks and relapsed again. And this whole time, like I was convinced I was doing everything in incarceration to prepare myself for success. I was taking classes, I was staying out of the nonsense that goes on behind the fence, and I was truly trying to prepare myself for success. And when I was released, you know, I had these highest hopes, and I made it 3 weeks and relapsed again. I had to do a shocker. And I got out from doing a shocker on parole, and I started using it again. And then I called my parole officer, and my family had driven 4 hours away to pick me up from this jail shock, from doing this shocker. And on the way home, like, my brother and his wife and my dad, and they're like, we're all getting ready to go out and get a steak dinner. You know, I had been incarcerated and stuff, and we're celebrating my release. And my brother's got a job lined up for me, and my dad's going to let him stay with me. And all my family had written me off for like 3 years. I couldn't even come home on Christmas Eve. When the whole family's there eating dinner, I showed up on foot with 6 inches of snow on the ground, and they met me at the front door and told me that I wasn't welcome there. So it was a big deal for them to come 4 hours and pick me up from jail. And making all these promises to help me get on my feet and stuff. And I remember we was finally coming through my hometown, and you know, I started having a mental obsession and wanting to use, and I ended up jumping out of the vehicle at a red light and running because my dealer was like 20-minute walk away from there. And I remember like stopping at this red light and telling my family and my brother and them that I wasn't going on to go out to eat, that I was getting out right here. And I remember like looking into the rear view mirror, and my brother, he's been such a strong like pillar in our family my whole life. He's so strong. And I just remember looking into the rear view mirror. Nobody said a word. He never said a word to me. And he had sunglasses on. And like I'm looking at him in the eyes in the rear view mirror, and I just see tears streaming down his cheeks. And with everything in me, I'm fighting not to hit this door latch and take off running to go use. And I fought and I fought and I fought, and I caved, and I just, with tears in my eyes, I jumped out of the vehicle and ran all the way to my dealer's house, and I had a needle in my arm 25 minutes later. And just the powerlessness, man, and the feeling held hostage by this thing. I remember it was like 3 days later up on a meth binge, and I've got a pistol in one hand and I've got dope and a needle in the other. And I'm sorry that this is so raw, but like this is what it was, you know. I remember coming to this total place of spiritual, mental, and physical bankruptcy, you know, this bottom on all levels, that, you know, I was tired of being a convict. I was tired of going to prison, and I was tired of being a junkie. And I didn't think that there was any way out. I had lost my uncle to suicide because he couldn't beat his meth addiction. I lost my little cousin to suicide because he couldn't beat his meth addiction. I lost my mom, drug related, and countless friends and family, and I never heard of anybody getting out of it. And I remember being on this creek bank and just hitting this total void of all hopelessness. Didn't even have the strength to put on the front that I didn't care anymore, because I did deeply and internally. And I sat there for like 4 hours contemplating suicide, and you know, thank God I didn't do it. I never did it. I actually finally picked up the phone and I called my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in like 3 years. And I begged her to come get me and to take me somewhere and take me and get me in rehab right now. And I told her what I was doing, and that if I, you know, that I wanted to commit suicide because I couldn't beat this thing, and then I was done. And she came and got me, man, and took me to my older brother's house. And they stayed on the phone for like 18 hours straight, calling I don't even know how many, calling rehab after rehab after rehab after rehab, trying to get me a bed. And I wound up in a faith-based program, and down in Huntington. And I remember calling my parole officer and begging her to let me go. And she's like, it was crazy because I had only been out of jail 4 days. And when I called her and I begged her to let me go to rehab, she's like, well, I was literally just about to call you and tell you that you have to go to rehab, or I've got to put you back in jail. So she let me go, and it was crazy, man, because you know, I wanted to be clean and sober, but I didn't want to accept a spiritual path. I didn't want to accept religion. And you know, but I was willing to hang out with these people, that was the 12 steppers, the meeting makers, the churchgoers and stuff, and you know, the people who pray and worship and stuff. I was willing to surround myself with them because they were staying clean and sober, and I did want that. But early on, I had formed a reservation to go back out and use. In my first month, I was like, man, this is not for me. I can't do this. I'm only going to hang out long enough to get my driver's license, get a vehicle, and then go back out to doing what I know how to do. I can just make it if I had a vehicle and my license. I could be successful in the dope game. And thank God, you know, in the 6 months, 6 to 8 months it took me to get a license and get my vehicle, they say stick around till the miracle happens. And in that period of time, the miracle happened. It's kind of a sad story and it's bittersweet, but you know, I had a best friend that I started the program with who, you know, I was taking the program about half serious, and he wasn't really taking it at all serious, if I'm being completely honest. And 4 months into this thing, he relapsed and passed away. And you know, they called me immediately to come over to the sober living house, and you know, I helped do CPR on him. I helped Narcan him. I helped when the ambulance came. I helped load him into the bag with the coroner. I helped pack him to the van. I called his family and let him know what happened. And then, you know, I found myself sitting in a meeting after that, and for days after that, right? And then I realized like 2 weeks had gone by and I experienced this major crisis and going through this grief. But it took me a couple weeks to realize that I had stayed sober through it. I had stayed clean and sober through it. And I realized that all these cliche things that I was hearing in the 12-step meetings, all these things that I thought didn't make sense and would never be able to be applicable in my life, I was subconsciously doing it. You know, the promises talk about we will intuitively know how to handle situations which used to baffle us. And that's exactly what I was doing. I had heard these things repetitious so much that I was just applying them kind of subconsciously, man. And I realized that the 12 steps, the programs, the higher power, asking God, you know, all these things was working. And then so then I started experiencing a paradigm shift. Partnered with that, I started seeing other people who had come before me or who had been way ahead of me come back and share where their lives are at now from applying these programs and stuff. And I'll never forget this guy. His name was BJ. I listened to him share his testimony one day, and he had it a whole lot worse than me, but he had like this perfect picket fence life going on. He had like 3 years clean. He had an amazing construction company that he started. He was helping people in recovery. He had a family, his own home, that nice new truck, and he had come back from worse odds than I did. And I was like, okay, if he can do it, I can do it. And it just gave me hope, man. It gave me motivation and determination to stick this thing out. And then once I saw these things start working in my own life, I wanted to tell everybody. I wanted to save everybody. I remember going home on weekend passes from the rehab, and I would literally go back to, because I felt like this heavy burden, this responsibility to my community that I had caused so much chaos and harms into, that I owed it to them and all my friends and the people that I used with to help try to pull them out to this new way of living and this better life. And it all started on the weekends, going home and loading up carloads of people and bringing them back to Huntington to go to treatment. And eventually, a couple times I put myself in situations where I could have used, I didn't, but it was just getting too much. Going to places where I used to use and them actively using and stuff. And so I started doing the social media outreach on my personal profile. You know, working through the 12 steps helped me deal with my own problems, developing a relationship with God and having a spiritual encounter with Jesus Christ helped set me free from all the things that used to keep me held hostage. And so I knew that I wanted to serve, and I wanted the people to experience what I got, because there's hundreds and thousands of people out there who are experiencing that hopelessness, like that true hopelessness where they think that a bullet is better than what life has to offer. And so I started social media outreach page on my personal profile, and I'm making these videos and I'm posting them, trying to reach the people in my own personal community of Summersville. And like these videos are getting views from all over the United States and all over the world. And all of a sudden, I've got people messaging me from everywhere, you know, wanting into treatment, wanting advice, wanting to hear my story, wanting to hear different things and stuff. And then, you know, I reached my friend limit on Facebook, and somebody told me that I could start a page and that it could reach more people. So I started the Sober Dad page, and just sharing honestly and openly, you know what I'm saying? Being transparent with all the stuff that we typically want to hide. And like it's crazy. People that I used to hate in addiction, like people that I was a rival to out in the madness, messaging me 6 months, you know, like there was just like this one guy that I'm thinking of in particular. It's happened a couple times, but this one guy, um, he messaged me one time, and he's like, bro, how I know that we haven't talked in years. He said, but I've been watching your videos ever since you started posting them. I've been paying attention. We've just been sitting back here in the cut. At first, we thought it was fake and you was putting on a front, but I've just stayed watching. He said, about 6 months ago, you did a video, and as soon as that ended, bro, I went to treatment the very next day, and I just hit 6 months clean and sober. And I just want to thank you for being so open. And this is somebody that I couldn't stand in the madness. And then on top of that, like people from all over the United States just messaging me. Just a lot of people out there wanting hope, man. They don't have hope, and so you know, that's been crazy. Um, Started speaking in schools because I felt like I could relate to a lot of children and I could impact. And I know that this sounds a little bit unrealistic, but this is the way that it played out in my mind. That if I could impact as many of the youth, the way that the world is going, and every year the addiction rate is multiplying and multiplying and multiplying. Statistically speaking, my kids are going to be addicts too. So even if I can convince 100 kids a year not to do that, that's got to have some sort of effect for the next generations. Um, and you know, I don't know, man. I've spoken at like 20 to 30 different schools, close to probably 70,000 students before COVID hit. And I remember like going to these schools and just sharing my story and a lot of times crying, and then afterwards having a line of like 10 to 20 students lined up to speak to you, and all these kids struggling and going through the same things that I went through as a child. And it's just been powerful, man. I was in sober living practically 2 years after treatment. I went to 60-day inpatient, did 6 months in sober living, moved out, rented my own house, and me and my friends pretty much had our own sober living with our own personal peer-to-peer accountability inside the house. And then after the lease was up on that, a year later, I moved into another building and helped somebody start their own sober living house. And I was there for 3 or 4 months and then moved into my own personal house. Worked at a mattress factory for 2.5 years. It's the longest I've ever held down a job in my whole life. Was actually a foreman in the factory, and went on to get certified in peer support. And I'm currently work as a peer support specialist and a program director. Actually just I've become a peer support in September of last year, and worked at a treatment center and absolutely loved it. You know, this is where I feel purpose. This is where I feel like I can make an impact in any way that I can make an impact I want to. But these are my people, man. People that's overcoming addiction, people that's in recovery, people who are struggling with addiction. Like these are my flock. These are my people. And so I did that and then 2.5 months ago, I left there and opened up my own place. We just opened up a nonprofit, a 20-bed male facility, and it's faith-based, and it's a 12-step curriculum program. And we focus a lot on community engagement, removing social barriers, getting people a solid foundation in God. 'Cause, that's what worked for me. Having a Christ-centered recovery, and I know that that's not for everyone, but it's for. But the path that I walked will work for a bunch of other people. One of the huge things with the Sober Dad platform was constantly people reaching out for help and wanting to get into treatment, but they didn't have financial means, and they didn't have insurance. It's a huge barrier for people, and there's like maybe that I know of like 5 to 6 programs across the nation that will accept you with nothing, not a dime in your pocket, and no insurance. And so we wanted to kind of help fill that void a little bit. We currently have 16 guys right now, and I'm blessed every day to watch these guys overcoming things and just suiting up and facing life with a clear conscience, a clear mind, clean and sober. I have 2 older kids that was adopted whenever I went to prison the second time, and their mother had passed away to a brain aneurysm, non-drug related, and I lost them because I was in prison, and they were adopted out. I have to wait till they're 18 to be able to see them. But I also have a 5-year-old son with another girl who she's still in active addiction, and her mom has my son. I've been fighting for him for almost 3 years now, and I just since March, I get 3 weekends out of the month with him now, and I'm not giving up there. I'm going to try to establish and reestablish this bond and this relationship with him, and go back in front of the judge at a later time and try to get him full time. I have a newborn daughter and a fiance. In my first month in recovery, my sponsor told me to write down a list of 10 things that I hope to accomplish in 5 years. And I wanted a 2012 F-150 XLT crew cab, full drive. And I have that truck specific to the make, year, model, even the collar sitting in the driveway out there. I've become a pillar in my community, and I don't mean to sound ego driven or prideful about that, because that's just through the grace of God and these 12-step programs, and ultimately the people that came before me that showed me the path. But my sister and my brother that I used to have terrible relationships with, like, it's crazy now, because remember I said that I showed up in 2016 on Christmas Eve and got turned away. Now I live 2 hours away from home, and now all of our family functions, holidays get scheduled around when I can be there. So if I don't get my son on the weekend of Thanksgiving, or I can't be home to eat Thanksgiving dinner, they're pushing it back 5 days, waiting until I can be available, man. And I'll cry right now thinking about it. Just where I came from and where I'm at today, man. And it's just so unreal. And I just want to help other people make it to where I've made it to, my sister and my brother, when they're experiencing problems in their own lives, they call me for my opinions and my guidance and stuff like that. And it's just mind blowing to me. Long-term goals from here going forward. We hope to, personally, I hope to have full custody of my son. I hope to, in the next 5 years, put down a down payment on an actual house. I'm renting to own a 2-bedroom trailer on 8 acres of land. and it's a perfect start, but I want a home on some acreage that I can hunt and fish on. And I want to have my son full time. Um, I just want financial stability, and I want to be able to. I want to be. I want to be blessed enough to be able to bless other people. Um, as far as career wise, I hope that in 5 years we've expanded our men's facility, and also in addition opened up a women's facility, and just keep doing what we're doing and live in the purpose, man. And that's really all I got.
Adam, I want to say thank you so much for just being real and honest and genuine. That just, to me, it comes through. Like I said earlier, I follow your Sober Dad page. And so I think that it's just a testament to who you are. And I think that's awesome that you have so many people that you're able to reach with this platform. And so I want to thank you so much for just being willing to take time out of your day today to share with us. And then I hope that this reaches someone that just needs to know about that hope that you talked about. You said there was a lot of hopelessness, but now you have that hope. And I just hope that this reaches that person that needs that hope today, to know that they're not fighting this alone, that there's people, like you said, that have come before them, and that you're right there cheering them on. And so I am so thankful to be a very small part of this platform, to be able to help share this. And so I want to thank you so much again for being a part of our This Is My Story series. For those of you that are watching, thank you so much for taking your time out to just tune in today and listen to Adam's story. Remember, this is National Recovery Month, and the theme for this month is recovery is for everyone, every person, every family, and every community. And Adam is one of those people. They're just one. That's just one person. And so we just want to thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this today. We want to thank you for watching, and be on the lookout for more This Is My Stories this week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.